Okay, what do you use that's not GitHub? Like GitLab? Bitbucket. I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah. I mean, you could also have said, let's see here, Bamboo. And that's the Atlassian stack, yeah. Isn't there an AWS stack that has like their own thing?
What do they even call it?
Yeah, I don't know. I work at Microsoft. I don't know. I work in Azure engineering, yes. My job is, we have Azure DevOps. So Microsoft is terrible at naming things like DevOps. We've got Loop, you know. I really hate their outlook on naming. They try to make a PowerPoint and it just sucks. Like their word choice is absolutely terrible. They do not excel in any way, shape, or form. Oh, Lappy Top went to sleep. Should be back up now. There you go. See, it crystal clear here. So is it just the projector, or do you need like a 1080p signal or a 4K signal? What do you want? It's the projector? All right. Yeah, it's not your guys' fault. You didn't have too many drinks. Like these are not like leftover from last night or whatever from like the different meetups. There's no blurriness. It's not you. It's me. But if you are curious, there's my GitHub. Let me see if I can zoom in on this a little bit. See, I can't really because I'm presenting off the web. So I'll do it this way. If you want to go out to github.com/codebytes, CODEBYTES. That is me. So you can find my profile here. Hey, that's me, he, him. And pretty much all of my talks are out there, including this one, dev containers. And for all of my talks, I pretty much just live in GitHub. So you're going to find a slides folder. The slides are all in Markdown. There's actually a GitHub action that runs every time I commit. It's hosted on GitHub Pages. So you can go out and you can like just feed my content. Like, see, look, it's all right there. Blah, 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 blah. It's all there. So you can just take the raw Markdown content and do what you will with it. But I also have lots of demos and stuff for a lot of my other talks. So, and then the slides, like I said, are here because I'm presenting off the internet. So, it's a cool tool. Who's ever heard of MARP? M-A-R-P? Who's heard of like some of the other JavaScript Markdown slide frameworks? Like, there's a whole bunch of them. I use MARP. It's actually one of my favorites because we still got a couple minutes. So let me just, new window. I just love this stuff because it's just so much fun.
Is it like?
So like here's my slides, and like this is how I work usually. And what's also awesome is you can create, you can embed Draw. People use Draw.io. Who likes Draw.io? Draw.io is cool, right? What if I wanted to make a diagram.drawio.png? What is a Draw.io PNG, you might ask? Well, there's an extension that somebody made. Oh, I mistyped it. I said Dario. It's not Dario. Draw.io. Somebody made an extension for Draw.io that loads the embedded Draw.io right into VS Code. And it's a savable, editable PNG that's also a Draw.io file. So I don't need to go export from Draw.io. I can pretty much just live inside VS Code and draw boxes and arrows to things, and then save it, and it's a PNG, and then I could go to my slides, and I could be like, oh, hey, that thing I'm working on where I'm like in the flow state, and I have a diagram, and I want to add my new image diagram, Draw.io. And it's checked into my repo. So I don't have to go to Draw.io and export it and save it. Like, this is the source of truth.
What is the extension called?
Yeah, see? Like, you're not even here for this part of the talk. This isn't the talk. This is just me being a nerd, sharing things I love with people, which is why I'm a speaker. So this is internet slow. bundled Dryo integration by Hensig Dietrichs. This thing right here is so awesome. It only has 150 stars. It deserves more stars. It has like 3 million downloads, though. It is awesome. It doesn't have to be a PNG either, because you can make it an SVG if you want SVGs. So you can take any Dryo you have and then convert it into like the editable PNG, and the Dryo information's embedded inside the PNG at the same time, and then I can open it and draw stuff around and then reopen my file and preview it, and oh, what laptop am I using? Oh, I'm using one of those like really cool ARM64 7th gen Surface laptops with like that Snapdragon like sweetness in it. Did I mention it's also got like Olama, so I can do like on-device models and stuff. Like it's got that Snapdragon. Yeah, it's pretty badass. I like it. I also have recall enabled, so if I need to like go back in time on like what I was working on, I can easily find stuff here. See? Whoop, whoop, whoop. But all day battery life, it works amazing. It's awesome. All right, we got 1 minute. Nah, man. Yeah, I mean, if you got water, I'll take water. Sure. All right. My dev containers? You mean the ones I use on the plane? I also have a talk on .NET Aspire with Olama and OpenAI and GitHub models, because you can use GitHub models to do free model calling if you don't want to have a deployment to Azure, and then you can use Olama to do it on your device. So you can be on a plane, running containers, talking to Olama on the machine, doing Aspire stuff. Yeah, it works fine. There's native, pretty much native ARM64 of everything, Docker, Python, all the things. But I'll show you what to do if you don't have something that works natively and you need to go back to x86 for something. It's almost like Codespaces work. It's pretty cool. Sweet. It is clear. All right, let's get started. We're going to talk about the power of dev containers and GitHub Codespaces. I'm going to show you how the same technology underlies both pieces of the platform. You get all my slides and stuff out there at codebytes/dev-containers. The slides are there. Dev container stuff's there. My name's Chris Ayers. I work at Microsoft in Azrael. So under Azure Engineering, the part of Microsoft that makes Azure, I'm in the group that is really paying attention to reliability and making sure that we do analysis of like outages and incidents, and we study the platform and observability to make sure that if something happens, it never happens again. In fact, I write AI applications quite a bit, analyzing logs and incidents and stuff. So I'm building solutions constantly. I'm on a bunch of the socials, not really that one anymore. But yeah, feel free to reach out, connect. I am an international speaker. I've been doing this for about 10 or 15 years now, so I have a ton of talks on a lot of different things. I'm a little neurospicy, and I like to just talk about things I find cool. So we're going to talk about prereqs, what dev containers are, why to use them, how they work. We're going to build some. We're going to go over all the features, and we're going to go over Codespaces as well. So if you're just using dev containers locally, you're going to have an amazing time with VS Code. So if you're not using VS Code, you can use IntelliJ. If you want, I just use VS Code. Now, there's an extension there, the dev containers extension. You can also use the GitHub Codespaces extension if you want to connect out to GitHub. That's what you're going to need. Now, I will say, dev containers are running containers on your laptop or your desktop. So if you have a very weak and not very powerful machine, running a lot of dev containers can be painful over time. And so that's where, if you don't have a super powerful machine or resources, you can use Codespaces. And pretty much everybody gets access to a number of hours of Codespaces at GitHub for free every month. So you can use it if you need to for a short amount of time. Now, you can use Docker on your machine. If you have a remote server that has Docker on it, you can just use there's a remote tunnel extension of VS Code. You can like connect to that machine and then use dev containers on Docker on that machine over there. Like it'll do it over an SSH tunnel. So you don't even have to have Docker on your machine. You can connect to another machine with Docker and run dev containers there. It's awesome. And any other Docker compliant CLI. So for a lot of things, you can do that. For Codespaces, you just need an account. If you want to do it a ton all the time, you might need to pay for additional Codespace hours, but all right, and the sales stuff. So a lot of people use containers, but dev containers are environments that run in them. We're going to put all of our tools and things into the dev containers. VS Code will take a folder on your desktop or another folder or even a repository that you clone into a container and mount that folder. And then inside of it is where all the tools are. Anyone ever done anything with NPM before? Anybody ever had to do 2 different projects or folders or samples that had different versions of NPM and you broke your whole machine? That's why NVM exists. We have like links and shortcuts to the different versions of NPM. What about with Python or C++ or .NET? Like, you break your machine all the time every time you try to get a new dependency or you're trying to build something. And not everybody remembers to do like a virtual environment or NVM. Like you constantly break things going from one project to another. Or you'll upgrade to this to get this thing to work, and you go back to the other project, and now that doesn't work anymore because it's on the older version. So just being able to have the tools and applications you need in a container, isolated from everything else, is wonderful. Like maybe I need Terraform, or I need the AZ CLI, and I don't want it polluting my system with all sorts of other stuff. So that's where I can keep all of the information about how to build, operate, and debug my application in one spot, the dev container that I use to build the thing. Now, there is an open specification. The dev container specification exists out at containers.dev. We'll be visiting that a little bit to talk about the specification. But other companies are working on this. This is not just a Microsoft thing. Like, there's a lot of companies that are starting to support it. One of the best things I've seen is onboarding new people. Has anyone ever joined a company and said, what do I need to install? Who got everything they needed running perfectly in under a month? Huh, only a couple of hands. There's usually provisioning. Where do I get the installer? Where do I get the license key? There's, which path do I need to put the binary for the config file to pick up the thing? You got somebody that installed version 14. You got someone that installed version 16. They check in code, all their tests pass. You pull it down, it breaks. Anyone ever had that happen? Consistency. It's a pain. So dev containers help start and resolve all of these problems. Not only that, dev containers have hooks in their life cycle. So when you first clone it and build it out, you can run some commands. Maybe every time you connect to it and start it up, maybe you want to do npm install, .NET restore. Maybe you want to do some sort of update. You can automate tasks that you have to do every time. I need to do an npm restore, I need to do a .NET build, I need to do, like previously to Spire 8 and 9, .NET workload update. That was terrible. I'm glad they got rid of it. Like, there's things that you can automate that you might not always think about doing. And now, because you have your tools in different containers, they're isolated. So you have a little bit better security through this. So dev containers really are focused on the inner needs loop that you have. You can reuse your dev containers in your CI process. You probably would not use them directly in production, but this is where all of the versions, all of the tooling, all of the things you need to build and run your application locally, that is the same thing you probably need in your CI process. So we can optimize that. We're probably in Linux. We got this version of the tooling. We got these extra libraries. I got this Terraform CLI. I got the AZ CLI. I got these different pieces I need. And what's awesome is, because I'm using VS Code on my local machine, it's my normal window. Like if I'm in Windows or even on Mac, it's a native application. I copy and paste, resize it, put it on multiple monitors, who cares? I'm interacting with a native UI application code, VS Code. I get the theming, I get my extensions, I get all that stuff. Under the hood, it has that connection to the container, and it's doing all of the file operations inside the container. It's executing the extensions inside the container. I can open a terminal and run commands inside the container, and it will mount my local source drive. It is just this wonderful, seamless thing that hides all of the pain that a lot of people have done in the past of, well, I got to spin up this container, and then, here's my big Docker file, and here's my, don't worry, we can use Docker files, we can use Docker Compose, like all that stuff still works. You're just going to get a lot of extra goodness on top of it. But this helps you keep your main environment clean and smaller. Really, on your machine, all you're caring about is Docker and the images for VS Code. Or the same thing in Codespaces, VS Code locally. And we'll get to that. So, where do they live? There's a little folder in the root of your directory, or root of your repo if you've done it, called .dev container. And inside it, there is a dev container JSON file. Don't worry, we're going to make some of these. We're going to dig into them. We're going to play around with these. But that's where it lives. That's where all the information about it is. The name, the image, or Docker Compose that we're going to be using, or Docker file. The features that we're going to add to it. Port mappings, permissions, hooks. You can even have multiple. Let's say you want one dev container just for your back-end system. Maybe one for your front-end system. And then I use my little MARP thing for my slides and documentation. Maybe I want a different container for documentation because I don't really need Python and Node and .NET installed in it. I really just need this one little tool and the right set of extensions. Did I mention you can tell it exactly which extensions you want for each dev container? Did I mention that yet? Oh, I must have forgot. You can also have custom settings that get applied. You just have to add a layer to your subdirectories. So how do we build one? Well, if we have VS Code, we hit the command palette shortcut, Control-Shift-P or F1, and you just type dev containers if you have that extension installed. And the option we'll pick is add dev container configuration files. Now, you can actually have it in your user directory that's not checked in anywhere, so you can just have a collection of dev containers that you use across multiple projects, but you can add it to the workspace and check it in so that anybody that uses your project has the same dev container file. And there's some choices. So I know some people like Alpine, or maybe you want Debian or Ubuntu, but maybe you want one that's just a targeted community-supported Python one, or one for Node, or one for just Terraform, or one for .NET. They have those. So there's this huge list of templates, and we're going to go look at it in a sec. But like, do you want just a base image, and then you use features, which we'll come to add stuff? Do you want them targeted language-based containers, because they have those, or tool-focused? So there's ones for Jekyll, like for my personal website. That's hosted on GitHub Pages. I have a Jekyll dev container there. I don't have Jekyll installed anywhere. I don't have Ruby or any of the bits. I literally connect to the dev container and edit my markdown and bundle exec Jekyll serve, and it runs locally, and I don't have to worry about maintaining that configuration. So let's go out real quick and look at some of the templates. So there's a search box here. What does that tell you? There's a lot. So there is a maintainer list. So this is the dev container spec maintainers. This is out on the dev container spec website. This is where the specification is. So we have Alpine if we need something super small and tight. There's also stuff like Anaconda and C++. There's a Debian. Maybe I just want to use Docker. Docker in Docker, Docker outside Docker, Docker outside of Docker Compose. Like, like, because you're running the container inside Docker, so maybe you want to do Docker inside your Docker, It's turtles all the way down. And you can see we have, most of these are maintained by the official spec maintainers at the top. These high-level ones that they are going to patch the underlying OS. They'll probably patch the version of the thing. But then you start getting into fun ones. So maybe we want Aspire with Azure SQL. Maybe we want R. You know, there's a few for different functions that different people have supported. I've actually created a couple of these and submitted them. They're just in PRs. There's actually documentation here on the specification side on how to create templates. Look, there's a universal ARM64 one. Yeah, see, and I knew I'd get you there. So we got our base template. We got our OS. I got my Debian, or I got my C#. But what if, you know, we got to do a React front end? Well, this is where we can do other things. We can customize our dev container. We can add features. So this is where we can layer on specific tooling. We can layer on specific extensions we want to use in our dev container. We can actually specify settings. So maybe there's like this setting that we put down there in like our testing thing that like we want it to be in this format. We want to use this set of flags every time we compile. We can put those in there. Those startup tasks, if we want to always do like a restore or an install. And even port forwarding. So if I hit F5 and I want port 5000 to be redirected from inside the container and surfaced to my local machine, I can do that. This also applies to GitHub Codespaces, where I can have something running in a machine in the cloud, and I can hit localhost 5000 here, and it will redirect and route, and I can still debug it. It's awesome. So I said features. Like I work on Azure, so I usually put the AZ CLI, maybe the Azure Developer CLI. Sometimes I'll put the GitHub CLI, so I have some scripts where I'm doing GitHub Actions, I want to set variables. There's other clouds too. Maybe I want Terraform or Kubernetes, or I need to add React, so I need Node, or I'm going to do some AI thing with semantic kernel, I want Python or LangChain. Well, you thought the template list was big. I think I've submitted 5 features because I did a talk on Secure Terraform, and there were a bunch of tools at the time that didn't have extensions that I wanted available so that I could have a base Debian image, and then maybe I had Trivy, or I had like Nessus, and it didn't exist, so I went and created it. But let's just see here. We got all the official maintained one. There's a ton from the Rocker project. So like if you just want to like do an apt package on the fly, like you can easily add that. Just you add like 2 or 3 lines and like pick random apt packages or conda. But then it keeps going. Yeah, Brendan Burns, you know, helped create Kubernetes. Also like big at Microsoft. WASI for Go, yeah. Well, hold on, we're about halfway. I don't know if you noticed here, I'll just do this. Better? Look, there's a lot here. So if you want a tool, you'll probably be able to find it. So there is a balance. If you put it in the Docker file in the base image, it's probably going to build fast. If you start adding a bunch of features, that will slow down your build time, but once it's built, it'll be a little bit quicker. Let's just go build one. And I had a couple things going in the background. I'm just going to kill them off, whatever. Let's open one and see what it looks like, and we'll talk through it. And you can see with my extension, it might be a little hard, but it's showing both my folder and then like the folder running as a dev container. So like it gives you both options. So this is my repo. Here's my slides. Let's do a little zoomy zoom. Notice I have 2. I have a Codespaces container and a slides container. Let's look at slides. So I've got an image. Let me make it a little bigger for you. I got an image. I'm just using Bullseye, so base Debian. And I can add features. I could forward ports. So there's these customizations here. I have like a post start command. So has anyone seen the trusted workspace thing in VS Code? You open a folder and it's like, do you trust this workspace? Anyone get annoyed by that? Anyone know that you could tell VS Code on startup of a dev container file to just trust it and shut up? As in, this is a safe directory? Well, I did it because I trust myself, but you can do that. Notice I'm setting individual settings inside VS Code. So if I bring up my settings and I look at like Markdown or Markdown settings, I need to go to settings. Settings. And I want to do like Markdown dot. See, there's a couple of settings here. And there's variables. I can set those specific settings. So when I connect to my dev container, it will override the settings that already exist in my current profile with these, specific to this dev container. I can also specify exactly which extensions I want loaded for this dev container. So I don't have to have them in my overall global profile. I can just say I want them for this dev container. So it's more isolated. That means my VS Code starts up faster. Who has like 50 extensions now, and it used to take 5 seconds to start. Now it takes like 20. This can help you with that. Also, you can use profiles. If you're not using profiles, you can use different profiles, in case you didn't know. So this is the dev container file. And let's just double check that extension, dev container. Again, it's going through my cell phone, so we don't have good internet here. I just wanted to bring up the extension, but I'm about to just say I don't care. So, dev containers, there's a lot of settings here. I'm just going to reopen. And so you can see I have my choices between the two. I've made and opened this container many times before. Yeah, here's the extension. And so when I open it, notice at the bottom, it now says opening a remote. It says connecting to dev container, and I can actually show the log. Because I've already made this container before, like there's the safe, like it just started the container back up and reattached to it. So like I'm now in my dev container. Like I've got a different path. Like who am I? I'm in Linux. Like this is the VS Code process running inside a container. And I can even, you'll see here, there's 2 tabs now. There's a local install. These are extensions that are installed on my local VS Code. There's also a dev container installed. So these are actually installed, including the Markdown ones and stuff, inside the dev container. Like, and I can, there's like an option on some of these to like install it. So if I go find a new one, I could be like, hey, I would like to install this inside the dev container. Yeah, see, there's a button, install in dev container. So it will install it inside that container. All right, so let's just make a new one, and let's see what happens. New empty folder. So I'm going to do Control-Shift-P, add dev container configuration files. This is something I want you guys to try if you don't have one already in one of your repos. Now it is, again, going over the internet. It's just taking a minute. There we go. I do not want my cell phone to go to sleep like I want to. I got up at 4 this morning to fly up here. That was part of the joke, yeah. So here, add it to the configuration file directory so I can check it in, or add it to my user data. So I can have a set of dev containers that are just mine on my local machine, or I can check it in. I'm going to check it in. Here's that list we saw. Like it's a nice big old list. What if I want to do, I really want to do some Python. So I got checkmark 1 from the dev container people. And I grabbed the wrong cable. Of course I did. I got too many devices. So I'll do the checkmark 1 because I know they didn't pay $8 and I like their tooling. And maybe in addition to Python, because I picked Python, maybe I also want .NET. So now I have both my template I can easily select, and I can go easily select extensions. And I can configure them if I want. So I can like dig in and go, what version of .NET do I want? Oh, I want that latest. And then, oh yeah, I'd like a Dependabot file. Who knows about Dependabot? OK, Dependabot's awesome. Dependabot from GitHub, you can configure it to look at like your package's JSON, and it'll scan your NPM dependencies, and it'll be like, hey, these are out of date. They're CVEs. You should update them. And it will submit PRs to try to update your stuff. You can point it at .NET and NuGet, and it'll be like, hey, this package is out of date. You want to update it. Also, you can have it look at your dev containers. And so if you have out-of-date templates or features, you can say, it'll tell you, hey, you should probably update this. This extension got updated because you hard-coded a version. So Dependabot's awesome. It's great for security. Go check it out. But here is the file it made. You can see we got our image. We've got a feature of .NET. This is where that versioning comes in. And then we've got some other options. Now, I will say if you go Control-Shift-P again, and you wanted to add other things, if you do configure, there's configure container features. So if I wanted to come back here and add more features, I can. Like, I can come and modify it. Now, there's a weird little thing. Notice how it says under .NET latest version right now. When I reconfigure my features, it'll assume, it'll either ask me all the same questions again and I have to remake those choices, or if I say use the defaults, it'll use the defaults for everything, the old thing and the new thing. So it'll kind of get rid of version latest. I'm just waiting to see if this will load because it's querying the features, and if not, I'm just going to reopen it. So Wi-Fi slow. What I'll do instead is, once you've got your dev container file and we can see it's living there, we can either hit the, yep, there it goes. So now it's like, do I want to add other things? Like NPM, I'll say sure. Let's do Node.js, and I'll say keep defaults. Notice it got rid of the option I picked for dev. Just in case it bites you, like it'll do that if you say do defaults. So now I can either hit the little button down here, which is where my dev container and remote extension is, and I can reopen in a container, or I could hit the command palette and do reopen in container. And there's also some options for rebuilding. So if I reopen in container, like normally you don't see this. Like I'm like clicking the button intentionally to bring it up, but it's going to, since I've already pulled them, they're probably going to be there already. It's going to scan the configuration. It's going to talk to my local running Docker. It's going to pull the base, and then it's going to do the features. So again, Docker itself is kind of fast. What slows things down is features. So with features, it's like scripts that run after the Docker image is done. And so a lot of times they'll do like an apt update. They'll try to figure out the OS. They'll download like a specific utility or something, or run a script to install it, and then they'll clean up the apt directory if you're in Debian. And then if you do the next feature, it'll do the same thing all over again. It'll do an apt update. It'll try to install a single dependency, and then it'll clean up the whole apt registry afterwards. So like Docker kind of bakes in the choices, and features give you that flexibility. So if you're first building a dev container and you're trying to figure out what you need, adding features is awesome because it gives you so much flexibility. You can add the feature, you can add the tool, and you can move on. And then once it's built, restarting it takes like 5 seconds because it's built. It's just that first time it might take a minute or two. Yeah, so.
And is this slow right now because it's trying to download from the internet?
Yeah, it's trying to download them from the internet right now is why it's slow, yeah. But let's say I had a problem. Let's say I screwed something up and this fails. So sometimes if you're trying to start a dev container, it might fail. I can go into this and I can say reopen. Well, I think I have to wait for it to try to finish. So I'm gonna just cancel this guy. And go back to my previous container, a lot of times what I will have to do, and that's what I was trying to show, is if you are running into a problem, we've added our dev container files, we've edited it, we've opened it. If it works, it works, happy. But if it doesn't work, there's an option to reopen folder locally, and then you can try to resolve your error. So I'm in my dev container and I want to get back out. I can click the button and exit the dev container and go back to my local file system. So I can reopen it, not in a dev container. So now I can go edit the file, and if I had an error, it actually would show the error right next to it, so I could kind of debug it. You don't normally have to do that. Now, dev containers are great. So I'm on ARM64. This is an ARM64 laptop. So when I build a dev container, it's building ARM64 stuff. You remember when the Mac M1s came out, Python, a lot of data scientists had problems because it was trying to compile the Python libraries, and they just failed in a lot of cases. It was just painful. If I'm trying to use a package that doesn't work well with ARM64, it will blow up on me, and I might be stuck with that. And that's where I can actually do stuff with GitHub Codespaces. I could pick a cloud machine running Mac or Windows or x86 or ARM64. So if I don't even have an ARM machine and I want to build and debug ARM stuff, I can do that with a Codespace. I mean, I think right now it's mainly Linux, but it's the build ones, and they've started adding some support. But I can have a much more powerful machine. Going back out here to GitHub, you'll see when you have code, there's usually, hey, I want to clone it, right? There's this tab here too, Codespaces. So I can just create a Codespace here. And there's some information on it about building and all that. So if I just say create Codespace on main, GitHub doesn't want everyone to have to fiddle with the dev container config file and know all the bits and pieces and figure out exactly the targeted versions and things that you need for your application. So they have a universal image that has Python and .NET and Java and Node and it just has so much stuff installed on it that they just connect you to, because they assume it'll probably have all the tools you need and you don't have to do anything with it. And it might work out fine for you. Locally, I pretty much always make my own, specifically to have a really targeted experience, and I have the minimal stuff I need, and when I needed a new thing, I will go back and add the feature and expand it. So let's see if this connects, because it's pulling down JavaScript and it's doing an SSH connection. When you do Codespaces out of the box, it runs VS Code Web. So this is VS Code running in a browser. And it's doing the exact same stuff. It's connecting. I have extensions that are running in that dev container, all that stuff. That's not the only option. A lot of people don't realize this. So if I come up to my account, I go down to settings. Again, the joys of slow internet. We'll come down here to Codespaces. There's actually a couple of cool options here. You can do dot files. So if you're a big Unixy type person that has dot files, which are configuration files, you can have it automatically pull in your dot files into your Codespaces automatically. Maybe you want secrets that don't use API keys. For one, I always use managed identities. I used RBAC. I don't have secrets anymore. I don't use Key Vault. I don't use API keys for OpenAI. I use RBAC through managed identities and Azure OpenAI. But if you had a secret, maybe you're doing a third-party API integration, and you have an API key, and you don't want to have to enter it in all of your Codespaces, but you want it available, and you want to tell your developers, have your key name this and set it up on your Codespace. I can come in here, and I can set a user secret, and then it'll be an environment variable in my Codespaces for me to consume. I can maintain it here in one spot. I can have it sync with my VS Code settings on my desktop, as well as the cloud one. I can limit it to certain repositories. So I don't want to use Codespaces in all things, maybe limited ones. They've got some new security stuff. Oh yeah, I just want it to actually open on my desktop. I don't want to do VS Code in the web. I would like it actually to just be VS Code on my desktop. Just the same experience I just had in dev containers. Just open VS Code. Like, why are we doing this? Let's not do this. Like, this works. I can have the same experience. Like, we can see it's just using a code space. I don't want to do that. I'm going to go back to I've now saved it. Like, I changed the settings, so now it's going to do VS Code. And I do have control over, like, if I have connected and started a code space, how long until it shuts off? How many days should I keep it? You know, do I want to have some sort of data sovereignty and say I only want it to run in a certain region or area? Like, yeah, you can do that. So let's just go back to my repo. And let's try this again. And instead of, you know, I can reattach to this code space, and I can actually open it from here in different places. I'm going to delete that. I don't, that one just felt kind of slow. Let's do something different. So let's do this ... and we can do options. We can configure, like, this is going to give you the default dev container. You can actually pre-build it. But I'm going to do new with options, and this is where Codespaces is. So maybe I want to do a branch, or I want to do a PR. Hey, look, it's got my slide. It's actually picking up all of my dev container stuff. So this is the default one that is the universal image from GitHub that has all the tools. I just want that one. I can pick my region. You know what? Let's go up to 16 core with 64 gigs of RAM. Like, let's just dial it to 11. And so now, oh, it said launching VS Code. And I have this extension. It's like, hey, am I allowed to open VS Code? Sure. And it's wants to sign into GitHub, and I'm allowing it. Yep. Go ahead and sign in. Continue. And so I'm going to be on my desktop in my window locally with my extensions and my themes and my dark mode. You can see it's opening a remote tunnel. And it's connecting to that code space in GitHub. So even locally, I can play with it, even though it's in GitHub. And I'm going to do one other thing while this is happening because, yep, this is allowing it to access the network, but that's fine. Now, if you have this extension installed, there's another thing you can do. You can do try. And there's an option here called try a dev container sample. And there's options. So let's look at Go. This is going to pull down a Go image. And actually, I'll do it even better. Let's do it this way. GitHub, try, Go, dev container. Let's just do it that way. And this is connected to a code space. So I'm like now, you know, I'm on an ARM64 laptop. If I cat CPU info once this terminal connects, this should be an x86 machine because I'm connected to a machine in GitHub running on Azure. I know, I'm doing too much. I'm greedy. I'm used to gig internet. Cell phone internet is not as good as gig internet, no matter what big cellular tries to tell you. All right, so I will try this guy here while I'm also doing, oh yeah. All right, then I'll wait for that one. All right, so we're just going to give it a sec to connect. Yeah, that's the container, and then this guy. It's all internet. There we go. So if I do something like cat silence. All right. Well, I'm just going to let it do things while I talk some more. So Codespaces has the exact same type of setup as if you were connecting to a remote Docker host. It's just much more automated for you. They also support JetBrains, IDEs, and the GitHub CLI. Like you can create code spaces, interact with them on the CLI. So you get a VM, you get your dev container, your source control, all of your toolings, the exact same stuff. They actually have some templates as well. You can actually go out to GitHub Codespaces and look at the templates and like use that template to create a dev container when you're like picking them. So like they bake them out for you for like Express and .NET and React. All right, let's see if those came back at all. Let's see. Nope, not back yet. Because this is pulling and I'm just going to kill this. This is just too intensive. Yeah, so AMD EPYC 64-core machine. So that is not my local machine. My local machine is obviously not that, which we talked about. It was a Snapdragon. So I can work on different architectures. I've used this when I was like debugging something and I was having problems with it, ARM64 at the time, and I can just do it straight on x86. So again, internet is important here, but it's also hardware. If your hardware can't support all of the power that you need and you just have a thin one but you have good internet, cool, you can do code spaces really well, really well. Let me try, and there's the templates. So blank templates, .NET templates, all of those. So out on VS Code, they actually have a whole section on dev containers. They have all of the things that you need to get into it. They've got tutorials. You can attach to running containers quite easily. There's one thing I want to call out that has bit me more than once. So let's say you're in Windows. You clone your repo in Windows, and you connect it to a dev container. That dev container is running Linux. So Linux line endings and Windows line endings are a little different. And that can actually be really annoying. And so normally in all of my repos where I'm using dev containers and I'm trying to do this, what I will do is I will do a get attributes file with information about the carriage return line feed endings. Otherwise, as soon as you start opening and working in the dev container, it will tell you that every single one of your files have been modified in some way. And it's annoying. It is very, very annoying. So to get around that, just have that get attributes file, and it will save your annoyance. So if I like take that out, it'll be a pain. Now, who's using all of these dev container features and tooling? Anyone do home automation? Anyone play with Home Assistant? Let's say we want to go out and contribute to Home Assistant. Huh, they got a dev container. Would you look at that? So they want people to be consistent in how they develop using consistent tools. I did already clone it. I was about to open the local one just so I don't have to deal with that. So they use dev containers in their development teams. They want people to be consistent. So if I go to samples, boom, let's just do this. So there's our dev container, and if we look at it, they're doing all sorts of stuff. They're adding that safe directory thing too, but they're also running a setup script. They're using a Docker file, using a relative path. They've got some other commands they're doing. They're setting environment variables for their dev container. They've enabled the GitHub CLI feature. They've got some port mappings. They've even got run arguments, how they want VS Code to run, and then a bunch of customizations and settings, including, oh, I want PyTest to be run this certain way. I want this shell to be used because we configured it that way in our thing. We've got some YAML configurations and Python configurations we're doing. Like they have said, this is how we want our environment and how we want you to work with us. And if we come down here, we can go look at their Docker file dev. And so they've, using the Microsoft base one, and then they've added the tools and features they need. So they used the feature. Once they had the feature for a while, they then extended the base dev container image to do some other stuff they wanted. Anyone do Python? Any sort of Python? Okay. C Python. So some of the core engine of Python. Huh, look at that. They got a dev container. So they operate on some of the different hooks. Like when we're creating our thing, do this. Well, use that base image. I want these commands to happen every time I start it. I want these extensions and customizations. Here's my compiler path. Here are my defines. You don't have to do all the setup. They've made it easy for you to contribute. They want 4 space tabs. Ooh. But then this person wants 3 space. So I don't know. Like see, you can code review your configurations because it's part of your repo. I think that's pretty awesome. Now let me try this thing one more time. We're out of time, so I will. I'm going to have this go while I take any questions. But please go out here to, look up dev containers. Like look through some of the options. Like I said, you can do remote, Docker images. You can do attached to containers. You can do all sorts of things with Docker Compose. And if we go out and really dig into some of these spec features, there's a ton of options to the specification. I didn't even cover some of the debugging and network mapping, but all of this stuff is here and defined. So capabilities like the hooks they're using, if you want to wait for things, if you want to do some compose-based articles or features, environment variables, mounting, lifecycle, all of it is well defined here, and there's usually pretty good documentation and examples. So this is at containers.dev. This has all of that information, including those tools that work with it and how you configure it. VS Code, IntelliJ, some of the CLI commands, GitHub, those customizations are in there. And then there's some other guides on working with it, like pre-building and actually creating features. So it's all documented, it's all there, it's all open, because this is an open specification. So, yeah, see, it's not going to download that in time. So I want to thank you guys all for coming, and if you have questions, please come up, connect, reach out, hit all the links, but anybody have any question or concern? Yeah.
So say my company does hardened containers, only can use their RHEL containers. Is that a supported use case in dev containers, or is there?
Is it a Docker image?
It is a Docker image. So that there's no binary that
No.
Microsoft's packing in.
No. Just like with, if you've ever used the remote tunnel extension, where essentially it's like you're SSHing in, and then it might put the VS Code server back in. I think it will probably try to get the VS Code server back in on it, or use an SSH connection. But
has access to that, that's
yeah,
going to work.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and then you can take that base image, you can do additional commands to extend it, and then use that. Anybody else? Yeah. So that's a different thing. Azure DevOps, I believe they're working on support. Just like Visual Studio 2022 supports dev containers only for C++ dev containers. Don't ask me why.
So I'm assuming this is only support for Linux containers.
Correct. Right now it's only support for Linux containers. If that documentation changes, we'll find out together.
So it's not like what it was, especially when it comes to the Codespaces.
It's not like GitHub Actions runners where you can have Mac, Windows, and Linux, and you can pick different things. Like Codespaces are, you're spinning up a Linux x86 runtime image.